This is a little demonstration of how I put handles on mugs. These are my somewhat smaller than full-size tankard mugs. Very simple cylinder with a few bands. And these are at a soft leather hard stage, that being that they're still somewhat deformable. If I squeeze them, you might see the deformity happening in the circle. But they're at a good stage to put the handles on. And first step will be to take my little wire brush and roughen up the area that I plan to put the handle on. This is just a dowel with a piece of wire rope in it, glued into it, that has been untwisted. Very cheap, very efficient tool for that purpose. I've got some coils of clay that I rolled out, one for each mug, and I'll pre-shape that by, I have a board here that I wet, and by slapping the handle down onto it on its opposite sides, I can shape it into an oval, which will be closer to the shape that I want. In the end, saves a little time in the pulling process. Once I have that prepared, add some water to the end, and then I'll join it to the mug. And I'm using quite a bit of pressure. You can see I've got a hand on the inside backing up that pressure, so I'm pushing hard with my hand, mostly from the back. You can see how that's kind of deformed the shape of the lug, as it was called before it becomes a handle. That's okay, that'll come out as I pull the handle, any deformities. Now I'm working in the edges to make sure that they're well worked into the mug and smooth. There's no big gaps, kind of like smoothing caulk almost, but with more pressure. Now that I've got the handle well attached, I'll start pulling it. I've got my hand very wet, and I'm alternating between pulling between my first two fingers, my thumb and my index finger, and then also grasping the entire thing with like a ring, with my thumb and index finger forming a ring that will bring the width together, because every time that I pull down like this or like this, it is making the handle wider, and there's a certain point where I don't want it to get any wider, I want it to get longer. My thumb is also forming a little bit of a curve, a cup into the handle, which can be pleasant to hold, especially at the very top. As I get closer to being the length that I'd like, I start pushing up from the inside and creating a slight arch in the handle. And once everything is the length, the shape, the thickness that I'd like, I'll form it and attach it to the mug. So I'll grab the mug, twist it, and at the same time I'm pulling up on the handle, and then I'm going to lightly drop it down. I'm making decisions about placement, so I have to look for where it'll join to the body, how long I want it to be, and the arch that I want it to finally be. That's I think a pleasant arch, but I will like it to be a little differently shaped, but I'm leaving room for that. So I can just by hand tear off the excess clay. I've got a blunt knife called a fettling knife that I will use to carve off the last little nubs of clay. That wasn't very smooth, but it's okay. Got lots of time to make alterations. And then with the pressure is just as important to make sure that this part joins very firmly to the mug. So I want to use small point pressure, and that's what led me to make this form of attachment. Is I just use my index finger, or sometimes a pinky finger, or another finger, depends on what's going on with my hands. But very firm pressure in two different spots, and then that all gets smoothed with a little bit of slip. And the final shaping, by pressing here, I can open up the arc a little bit, make it a little bit more of a true half circle rather than a taper, a little more room for an extra finger near the bottom. And then using a brush and some water, I'm going to clean up the area where I joined the handle to the mug, get any fingerprints, smears, chunks, clear. Same thing at the bottom. Doesn't take much. The brush makes it nice and smooth so that it doesn't, I'm not leaving extra marks by cleaning this up. So there we go. There's the finished handle. And then I'll put it back on the board upside down for a little while. And we'll cause this part to droop a little bit back down. I'll reform it, but I like to have my bottoms up while they're drying. I tend to have less cracking with this particular clay body if they dry upside down. So that's putting on a handle.